on so-and-so that was streamed on YouTube, or the comedian skit that was now clips instead of, a full 30-minute episode with ad break, right? We're all kind of catching different beats of the same sort of things nationally. They affect us in very different ways.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because even what's on TV has changed. So, you know, the, it's not that it all changed at the same time, though. It's that it was a learned process. And as we think about bringing more cultural topics into the workplace, it's also happening outside in your real life. And that has changed so dramatically. If you just take a clip of back in the late 80s and 90s to today, TV shows were completely different. So your water cooler talk was completely different then than what you might see now, as water cooler talk is differently accepted. So I think it's more than just the workplace.
How do you think that, as baby boomers exit the workforce, that affects, right, the precedent set by the oldest in an organization, right? And what I mean by that is, right, you're getting more and more into the point in your career where your job's less how much do I perform in my team underneath my management or seniority, and how do I mentor um, people in their 30s and even younger in their 20s who are coming on organizations that I work with, right?
Yeah.
How is it that you're answering that question of how do I change how I'm interacting and uh, mentoring as I move into that role and as the boomers start to exit?
Yeah, more acceptance. But the real answer to that, I'm still exploring. It's not because I haven't had interaction with the younger folks and the younger generation. It's because I continually want to get better at what I do. If I'm going to be a leader and a mentor, I want to make sure that I'm taking into account the needs of anybody that would look at me in that way. But most importantly, at this point, I think let's bring on an expert. What do you think?
I think we're ready for it. Patch, go ahead, introduce them.
Absolutely. So today we're introducing Dr. Troy. He's recognized as the Talent Retention Expert of the Year by the International Association of Top Professionals, named Brain's Global 500 Top Entrepreneur, selected as a top business leader by Valiant CEO Magazine, featured on the Today Show, ABC, the Global BV TV Network, Beyond the Business Radio Show, and CEO World. I mean, Dr. Troy seems to have done it all and certainly an expert in what we're discussing today. So, Dr. Troy, I know you've got some other things that you're going to present and talk about. We'd love to have you. Welcome.
Fantastic. And Dr. Troy, in order to pull you up, just hit that raise hand button over here, right there, and I'll pull you right up.
Sweet.
Perfect.
I got moved up.
I love that shirt, man.
I love that. You see, I got promoted. I got moved up. I got moved up a tier. I love that.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
It should happen it should happen that frequently, right? So we should just all we have to do in the workplace is raise our hand and we get moved up.
Oh,
I
that'd
think
be
that'll
great.
wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
Welcome. Hey, we love to have you. Thanks for joining
Thank
us
you.
on Optimize and Elevate.
Well, that's great. So, John, I want to ask you a question before we get started. Tell me something that you're looking forward to doing in the next a couple of weeks.
Oh man, you know what? My grandbaby just got out of the hospital, ICU.
Oh,
I am so excited for her to see the real world at home.
that's great. Awesome. How about you, Jacob? What's something that you're looking forward to the next couple of weeks?
I am excited. My girlfriend, her parents just had a flood at one of their cabins up in a lake town, and we're going to help them kind of put things back to where it needs to be after some restoration. So
Really nice. Yeah, it's great.
How about you,
So
Dr. Troy? What are you
we're
excited about?
excited to do that. And
I am excited because in 2 weeks I get to officiate my grandson's wedding, and it's going to be a wonderful time for the family, and just really excited. I know I don't look old enough to have grandchildren that old, but it is true. Yeah, don't let the hair color fool you, is what I usually
All
say.
right.
Yeah. So thank you for entertaining that opportunity to make those connections, because we're going to talk about culture today, and it's about making connections before content. And it's the opportunity to get to know people and build upon relationships. And that's really what is happening. That's been the biggest change in the workforce today, is this emphasis and attention that's driven more to what we refer to as the transformational aspect of leadership, where individuals are focusing on the needs of others first before self. And I think that's the biggest change that I've seen in the workforce. Is when I first started, everything was driven toward the task. And if you got along with somebody, that was great, but you had to do the job. Here, we want you to do the job, but it's all built around the relationship. And it's just the difference in the way we would have approached situational leadership 20 or 30 years ago, to where we are focusing more on a transformational leadership approach today.
what does that mean when we're talking about transformational leadership? Let's get into like the broader context and then zoom in from there.
Okay, so realistically, the transformational approach that works with leadership in that area, in that context, is that leaders will focus on others first before self. Those leaders have a vision, but they spend their time teaching it. So it's not just I have a vision, but I now will teach the vision so that others will know where they fit in and how they can follow. I will have a strong emotional connection that I will make with the individuals that I work with. I am a good social architect because I understand how to manage my emotions and really manage the emotions of others. And I create a trusted environment where individuals are free to be able to express themselves, and people are more agreeable and accepting of individuals that have either alternative ways of thinking, alternative lifestyles, alternative cultures, whatever that happens to be.
Um, you mentioned teaching in there, and you mentioned relationship building. In leadership theory, it's often presented that there's a balance between task orientation and relationship orientation. What I think you're suggesting is this is a very balanced approach to that. How do you think leaders become transformational and learn that balance between a myriad of different principles?
Well, first, it's real easy. You just have to accept it, right? So if you believe that you're going to focus on the needs of others before self, you just say so. You just do that. But I think some things that will help you is, let's talk a little bit about cohesion, because I think that's going to give you a little bit more meat in this conversation. Cohesion, my study was around group dynamics with an emphasis on cohesion. And cohesion, there are three strategic elements. The first is belonging, which deals with inclusion. Then there is value, which is more than just how you treat people, it's their meaningful work. And last is shared mutual commitments, which is around how we collaborate within the work environment. So adopting a transformative mindset says, first of all, I'm going to think of others before self. So I get that part. Now, how do I want to implement that? Well, cohesion and those three strategic elements allow you to now bring this to life within the culture. And cohesion by itself is not its own culture. It's an additive to the culture. It's a way to infuse cohesion into the culture. So the organization may still have a culture of excellence or service or innovation or joy, and that would still be true. But when you infuse cohesion into it, what you're really doing is taking these strategic elements and laying it over top of the organization and finding out, where are there opportunities to create a strong sense of belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment? And some of the ways to describe this for the folks who are paying attention and listening to this. So, Jacob, I'm going to have to ask you some questions. So,
Yeah,
uh,
please do.
play along there. So, the first thing is, you do you like to throw parties?
Oh, I'd love to. I love to entertain.
Sweet, awesome. So, everyone, we all now have an invitation to a party that Jacob is throwing. So, we all feel
Woo-hoo!
woohoo, woohoo, right? Yeah, here we go. And you feel like you belong, right? Well, but belonging has to have the element of inclusion to finish the circle. So I prepared myself all day to come to this party that you're throwing. And I come to your house and I ring the doorbell. What do you do next?
Oh my word! I would want to share some sort of excitement. If I'm going to open that door and you're there, right? You need to know you're welcome.
Yeah, and
But that's my instinct, right?
right, but you'll tell me about food, right?
Sure,
And
sure,
if there's
absolutely.
and if there's music, you'll tell me that I can dance or that there'll be some dancing, right? And this
Yeah,
is my
yeah.
yep. So I'm doing some dancing, and then typically what happens when I do this, my daughter says, "Dad, you need to stop that." And I say, "Honey, why am I stopping it?" She says, "Because you're embarrassing me." And I go, "Great, then I know my work is partially done." So, but what happens is you are included when that sort of experience happens, and we
Mhm.
think of it in an organization. When you get an offer letter, you get your invitation to the party. If you come into the environment and no one pays any attention to you, or they only focus on here's what you need to do, here's your computer, here's your workstation, here's your files, get started. If you don't create an environment where the individual feels like they're going to be taken care of, then you don't complete the cycle of inclusion, and belonging is now messed up. You have to get belonging right before you can even get to the other areas. I then want to have meaningful work. So that's what value is. What I do, and we help organizations understand this through our cohesion culture program by saying individuals not only need to know what their job is, but they need to understand what happens to their work when they're done with it. Where does it go? And what was occurring to the work before they got it, so that they can have a full spectrum of the work from the beginning to the end. And then they'll see where they fit into it. It makes their work more meaningful. It helps them to understand why they have to follow a procedure or a process that they may think is silly or redundant, because it impacts others within the organization. That's one way that you can have an individuals within the organization help you with meaningful work. Another way is what we call a cohesion affirmation. That cohesion affirmation is, it has two parts. First part is, I recognize the role that you play, and then I appreciate you for the person that you are. Many times in organizations, they're very good in offering a system where it's an attaboy, it's an attagirl, a great job, thank you for doing that, which is awesome, and we don't want that to stop. But it's so much richer, it's so much more robust in the meaningful work that when I say, Jacob, you're doing a great job interviewing. You are a listener. You're taking notes. You're trying to make sense and bring everything together for those who are listening. That is
Sure.
a cohesion affirmation, because not only did I recognize you for your job as an interviewer, but I told you what about that. What is it about you that makes that job special?
Yeah.
Now, see, all of a sudden now interviewing is so much more meaningful for you than what it may have been before. And not only that, but here's the little sidebar bonus for the leaders in the organization. I told you three things about you that you are going to continue to repeat over and over and over again, because you were acknowledged for those items. You know those items are important to me. And if you know that those items are important to me, you're going to want to showcase them as many times as you possibly can, because
Sure.
you know, we get some sort of recognition. And in doing that, you still have to be careful as to whether the individual is embarrassed if you say their name or information out loud. But I looked at it like this: you're broadcasting a live show. I figured I could tell you live what your affirmation was. I wouldn't have to worry about doing it on the side. But if you know the person doesn't want public recognition, then give it to them on the side. It works out just as well. It's
Right.
customed for them. And then we have our shared mutual commitment. And that's when we're working on projects or we're trying to create these desired outcomes where we come together. And often we see that happen in collaboration when individuals are together. And there are two parts to that as well. The first part is need. If you're going to work with someone, you have to agree that you need them. If you don't agree
Yeah.
you need them, you're not going to get to collaboration. I don't care how hard you try, because there's going to be something missing. You see, when I say I need you, I now have now solidified belonging and inclusion again. I need you, which is meaningful. So now we're bringing it full circle. We're bringing it all the way over to this. And then the other part is trust. I have to trust that you will tell me the truth and that you will do the work that you need to do. When you do that, then now you have collaboration, and bringing these elements together in an organization isn't it's not casual, it's causal. It's a cause and effect. It's not correlational, it's causal. So the
Sure.
cohesion phenomenon says that when cohesion is present in an organization, the team will perform. They perform every single time, and they perform at a level of engagement that says that they are helpful, they're active to problem solving, they are vested in the organization, and they are eager to learn and grow and develop.
Yeah. Fantastic. Go ahead, Patch.
Dr. Troy, I'm wondering, in your experience with clients, it's easy to change or go after or have purpose, um, but it seems like there has to be intention behind that effort from the top level. Do you find that difficult for the top level individuals to accept and buy into the whole idea of culture?
Well, John, that's a great question. And so our team only works with organizations that want to build their culture from the top down and the bottom up. It can't just be one way, it has to be both ways. And eventually we'll meet somewhere nice in the middle. What we found for our clients is this: the clients who need us the most are not the clients who hire us. The clients who actually have a really good idea, but they just need a little additional help, or they think they're doing the right things, but they have this intentionality. And that's what you mentioned that is so important. If the leader is so full of themselves that they don't feel they can be teachable, they don't know any more information, or whatever the leader believes is that it's good for somebody else, but not for me, then this whole thing breaks down, because the concept starts from the transformative principle that I will focus on the needs of others first and then self. So if you have a CEO who does not believe in that philosophy, then what we try to do through the cohesion program is not going to work. And more than likely, whatever you're trying to put in place is not going to work. Even if you try to rule with an iron hand, it only works for so long. It's
Sure.
not going to work forever. People will get tired of it. They will then seek another spot because they don't deserve to be in an environment where there is a toxic waste being spilled all the time. So we really try to focus on that. And realistically, what we found is that a good number of individuals understand that they can use some help, and they're not afraid to ask for that help.
Certainly. And, you brought up a couple different points that really resonate with me. First of all, you have the ability to say, I'm not going to work with somebody who doesn't want my. That was the first thing that resonated. That's great. I totally am on board with that. Fantastic. Second thing is you talked about the iron fist and how people won't stick. And what you talk about in culture and cohesion is retention. And that's such a huge part of what used to be a long, long time ago, when people spent their entire careers at at a corporation, and through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the corporations were just trying to cut costs and squeeze productivity out of everybody. And now, and I just said it, production and performance, right? So what you promote is retention and productivity in your approach to culture and cohesion. Can we talk a little bit quickly, kind of give us the outcome of what these efforts?
So thanks for directing us in that area, because there are great benefits to having cohesion. What we find in organizations is that you can see up to a 50% increase in productivity and creativity as a result of teams who function in a cohesive manner. We already have studies that tell us that when teams are dysfunctional, and the global market pays $7 billion a year to rectify dysfunctional teams. We know that right now today, according to SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, they put out some statistics that say that it may cost an organization up to 150% of a person's salary to find a replacement. So those are the costs to it. So for those of the economic world, those CPAs and CFOs out there, this isn't a foo-foo event. This is a
Um,
to your bottom line event. And it is quantifiable. You can make a difference with it. It requires you to be consistent in the application of what you do. It cannot be a program that you say, we're just going to start with it and then not do anything. Oftentimes, organizations want a quick fix. They've taken years to screw things up, and then they want you to come in and do some magic training, like they think they're going to be the pills that Jack used or the seeds that Jack used to get to the giant and the golden goose. Or they believe it's some sort of a medication you can take. It'll be a pill that will correct the lack of behavior or whatever the time and effort and energy that you're going to put into it, and realize that you are going to make a commitment for the long haul. And when you've got your mind set in that way, then you can do it. We also encourage a lot of belief. There's a lot of belief around it. Organizations recognize when they set a goal, and it's really funny, when they set a financial goal, like I want to get X number of dollars out of a market, they'll set that goal and they don't even think anything about the future projected it. But when it comes to culture, sometimes they want it, well, I need to have it right this minute, or they're not projecting it into the future. So it sort of limits their ability because they feel like it has to be so instantaneous. And part of what we also do when working with executives within an organization is to help them find the ways to make culture a strategy. Peter Drucker is quoted, often given credit for this quote, that he says that culture will strategy for breakfast. And my philosophy is this: make culture a strategy, it will find something else to eat. And what you're doing is making culture on par with strategy, not as a subset of something else. And when you take a look at the balanced scorecard, which was presented 20 some years ago by Harvard business professionals, it's a balanced approach. It's financial, it's your client, customer, member sort of connection satisfaction, it's business processes, and the final is training and development, which has really morphed more into culture today. So, really, it's not uncommon for organizations to feel like it should be easy to have culture as a strategy. But there are organizations that still regulate culture underneath someone else. They're not invited to the round table. They're not invited to the senior most table. Sometimes someone else is representing it. Or if they do invite them to the table, they believe that that person is only trying to make employees happy. And so everything is employee based instead of what really makes sense for retention and treating people the right way. Um, you have to put culture on par with the other strategic elements, such as market share, balance sheet, administration, and how you're going to control that, your asset liability management programs, all of those things, getting new software, technology that you're advancing into the committee, into the organization, and you're making committed goals about those. Culture has to have that place. And until organizations can elevate it to that place, I think we're going to continue to see large companies promoting toxic work environments. And that's where we could make so much of a difference in getting into those larger organizations. But they have a very different model, and their model is not based around taking care of people. It's more of how much money can I make? So those particular organizations operate more on a profit over people philosophy.
I have two questions for you on that. The first one is, how would you, I mean, if we're going to throw culture up on end of year report or a quarterly report, how are we going to make tick marks to say, okay, yeah, this is how you've increased, these elements of cohesion, or anything else that you would maybe want to see on there, right? How are we tracking those numerically, or even, on some sort of score, right? How are we quantifying that data?
Okay, so that's the first question, then you'll have a follow-up question after that, right?
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, super. I just didn't want to jump ahead of you, so I was making sure
No,
we
you're
were
totally fine. Yeah, I get you.
okay. Okay, good. So there are some metrics that the organization keeps track of. So when we work with companies, we ask them to select their own metrics and report those metrics in with culture. One of them is so easy to think about is a turnover. And what we suggest is instead of saying we have a 4% turnover in our organization, we ask you to state it as you have 96% retention. All of a sudden, it's a change of optics, it's a change of the focus in that. You can also track, and many organizations do from career services, how many of their employees are being promoted, how many jobs are being promoted from within versus having to go to the outside. Another metric is looking at your succession plan. How many people have you targeted for your succession plan, and how quickly are they ready to take over in the event that there is either a planned or unplanned departure of that individual? Those are some very quick things that you can do. You can take a look at your salary administration bucket and separate the difference from when you might normally raise your salary because it is accepted to do that based on what's being paid in the market or your cost of living increase, and really begin to analyze it for what you are spending to replace other people. And you can keep track of those records. So those are just some of the things off the top of my head that we would work with an organization. But oftentimes I like to see what nuggets they have with the things that they're tracking, and then we can go from there. Oh, another one would be certifications. If an organization has what we would refer to as like an online university within their company, how many programs are people taking that were not a direct requirement of the job or a direct requirement of a performance review or a plan for improvement, and start to track what those are will make a huge difference. And then another one is we do offer through our Cohesion Culture program an opportunity to benchmark where they are in their culture in regards to cohesion. And then you do that before you do a lot of other activities. And then a year or 18 months after you've implemented a number of items on your plan, we'll go back in and reevaluate that team again. And we can pull the difference between individuals who were there when those changes were made versus new people who came on board and have no prior history to all the drama that was going on before you made the changes. So we can separate that and give the organization a truer picture of how things are going and what's working or not working.
Wow. Yeah. So there's a ton of things that you could turn into like its own report. Like there's so many things. Um, the second question, I got to start with a story. I've heard tell of an organization that does sort of like CAD work for like auditorium type things. And I've heard that their HR team is struggling to retain folks. And I heard the story from a friend who worked there for a time. And before he got there, all of these quit that were doing the work, all of their engineers quit. He got there, he was there a couple months, and there was no training program until he eventually quit. And it kind of sounds like they're in the cyclical process. How does an organization that, sees, okay, they have low retention, start the process of, okay, let's build more inclusion. Let's, build meaning into the work, right? How can they start there?
Well, I mean, the plan may be different for each company based on where they are, but there are some things that, again, we would look at. We take those three strategic elements of cohesion, belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment, and we sort of lay it like over top of the organization and find out are you supporting belonging and inclusion? What's that happening? Like, for instance, have you ever asked your employees what makes them feel included at work?
Mm.
So, Jacob, let me ask you this. What makes you feel included with what you're doing?
Oh, I think it's always the small one-to-ones. It's the one-off conversations where you talk about something completely unrelated to work or auxiliary to the actual projects being done.
Yeah. Oftentimes people feel included through communication. It's either you're asking me for my input, you're taking my input and using it somehow, some way. So organizations that you were talking about before aren't the story that you gave before
Yeah.
didn't sound to me like they even cared about whether the employees were connected or not. What they cared about was that they would come in and do a specific job or a specific task.
Yeah.
There was no discussion about the human element. And so you have to start working on the human element because it is people. I don't care how much technology you have. And by the way, I'm a fan of technology. As you know, I love Mingle. I love this whole program
Yeah.
because it fits in with belonging because you offer this virtual community, and that's also another way in which people can belong and feel connected is because they have a place to go, a place where they can express themselves, a place where they can be related, they can have relationships and do those types of things. So technology is really good. So I embrace technology. So I want people to hear that first and foremost, so that so their minds aren't coloring my conversations with something that's different. But you have to start with the human element because let's face it, it doesn't matter how much technology we put in today. It is people who get the tasks done. It isn't tasks who get tasks done. And there are only so many things that can be done from a robotic standpoint or from a generative AI perspective. And those things are going to be great, but the human element will still be here. To demonstrate that point, I was at a conference last year. I was keynoting for this conference, and there was an individual who talked about technology, and he had used this chat box. This is when the chat bots were first becoming, really popular. And so he asked the chat bot to give and describe what it means to be a human. And so he gave all these things about all this information, came back and came back and came back. And then he followed up with another question. He said, "What would you most like to be?" And the bot responded, "Human." I mean, so I'm just saying, for what it is, the generative AI may learn and may be able to treat, but it's always a synthetic relationship. It will never be authentic. Authentic is the dynamics that we have as human beings. It's what makes us different. It's why we are a particular higher power than animals and other species. It's because we have this incredible ability to use our brains in ways that most other individuals cannot. Most other species cannot do that. So the human element is still going to be very relevant as we continue to move through the cycles of technology. So really, organizations have to start getting the human element right. And when they do, then these other things will take care of themselves. I mean, if you've taken care of a person, whether they really know how to, like you haven't given them training, but you really take care of them, they're going to hang in there. And the reality is, if you are really caring about them, you're going to see they need training. You're not going to need them to have to supply information on an exit interview to be able to say, "I'm leaving because you didn't offer me any training." I mean, you have to look at yourself. Do you have training? If you don't, then you need to have it. It doesn't take rocket science to actually do some of these things. So that meaningful work is coming from, does the individual know what their work is? Are they trained and capable of doing their work? That's part of that discussion. And then where are you giving them opportunities to have these outlets where they can work with people to accomplish things? Individuals love working together on projects to accomplish common or desired goals, as long as that individual does not believe that they have been used to get to that spot. If
Hmm.
there's no harm or malice to the individual, they will work very hard to get it done. And then one last thing that I'll mention about the human element and why it's important is because we have a belief system, and that's what AI does not have. Our belief system has been proven over and over again. There's tons of research on it. It's sometimes referred to as efficacy. It's our belief can make up for the lack we have in knowledge or skill. But if we believe we can do it and we are going after it as though we do it, we can accomplish so much more. We may not be able to high jump higher than someone else. We may not be able to run faster than someone else. But if we believe we can, the effort and energy that we put into it will give you a greater result than if you held yourself back, limited your language, and felt like you weren't ever going to be good or successful in it.
Well said.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh my word. You had me speechless there for a second. Cash there is fantastic. I think every time I see him, even when he's working
He froze on
with
me.
someone who's new to the platform, oh yeah, he's great at that. And I think that a lot of small companies are struggling right now because they have more and more technical prowess that's expected of them, and there's more and more expectation to meet certain goals. But there's not necessarily this focus on time with people. There's not necessarily this focus. And I think the companies that do really well and scale are the ones that do that well. But it's not always an obvious step by step rule guide there, is it?
No, it's not. And so one of the things that I do offer organizations to think about for their talent retention is something I call fair play,
Uh,
and it's FAIR. And if you're a Survivor fan, I'm not talking about Johnny Fairplay. So I just want to make sure that we're all really clear about that.
This
This
is
is a different this is a different
oh,
kind of fair play.
little eye of the tiger there.
There we go. So it's the acronym FAIR, FAIR, and it stands for flexible work hours and locations. That's what people want. They want to have those opportunities. They need autonomy, meaning they want to fully understand what their job requires. They want to know, do I have the ability to spend money? Are there others in the organization I can call on to help? Are there others in the organization who are already going to be assigned to me that will help? What expectations do you have for the outcome of this project that you're giving me or the task? I is inclusion. Again, we go back to the belonging, and the full circle of belonging is inclusion. Still, the number one reason that people leave an organization today is because they do not have a connection with their supervisor. They do not feel included. The supervisor leaves them out. I mean, that has been historically true for decades. R is readiness. It's individuals want to be able to grow and develop and advance. And oftentimes they don't necessarily need to advance by getting another job, a job title, but they want to know that they are doing a good job and that they're really an expert in their job, not the expert, but an expert. And this is all coming very true when we look at the generational impact of what we refer to now as the Gen Z group. Some research on that has indicated that many of the Gen Z do not want to take leadership positions. And I thought about that when you were talking about the exiting of the baby boomers from the workforce. There will be a big gap when that baby boomer group is gone from the workforce, and it will not be filled necessarily completely by Gen X, but it does have the opportunity of being filled by the millennial generation for a period of time. But if the Gen Z group is not interested in taking on these roles, and when asked why, their response was, it's too much headache for the amount of money I would make. I would rather have a work life integration. By the way, they may have said balance, but I don't. It's work life integration. Balance is something completely different. We can talk about that later. But it's my work life integration with what I do, and and that really just brings everything full circle. So it's flexible hours and locations. It's autonomy for the job, inclusiveness with the individuals that supervise me and the people I work with, and the readiness that I can be to grow, develop, and advance in my career. Here's your fair play.
Very
Fair
fair.
play.
Very fair.
Yeah. So
As,
and so
as
I'm
we
so let
look
me.
at, you had mentioned tools earlier, and
Mhm.
um, totally agree with that comment. As we talk about human nature and what helps them perform, you've talked about inclusion, you've talked about these things. We can give these tools to everybody, but we have to encourage them and make them feel comfortable in utilizing for the effectiveness. Would you agree with
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. When we do our leadership programs for either our executive groups, our middle management, or what we refer to as individual contributors, everything that we put in place is easily replicable by the individuals attending. It's part of our concept of experience today, implement tomorrow. And it is about making it practical and making it easy for people to do. If you make it too complicated, they're not going to do it. But you make it easy so that individuals can go, oh, I can do that. So, for instance, we might teach from an onboarding experience that one of the questions you will ask employees when they first come in is what makes them feel included at work. You get some top level information right off the bat from them. So you're including them right from the very beginning. That did not take a software or a piece of technology. It just took very little effort for you to ask that question. We then recommend things like when new people come into your team, we sometimes like to have teams create what we call a rallying cry or a handshake, or they've got a slogan or something. And what they do immediately is teach the new person when they come in, this is our handshake, this is our rallying cry, this is, something that's unique to our particular group. Then the individual is indoctrinated right into the culture, because inside a large organization, there are small microcosms of the culture, and each of those microcosms are connected. And what we say is have them connect by belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment, and they'll never fraction off and go on their own. If you start to see groups and departments factioning off on their own, then something is wrong with cohesion, and you'll have an opportunity to fix it or correct it. Those types of fractioning off of an organization can happen when you hear employees say this. An employee might say, I really like my team I'm working with, but I hate the company.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
you might have an individual say, I really like this company, but I hate the team I'm on. I don't care which of those two you get to, you've got some dysfunction happening, and it's not going to be for long-term retention. It will only work long-term retention when individuals are convinced that the people they're working with are right and the organization is right. When there is a disconnect between either one of them, you have a culture breakdown.
And you had mentioned, I agree with that, but you had mentioned early on in the conversation that the bigger corporations are the ones that are struggling the most with this where I look at those larger corporations, and from a corporate behavioral perspective, they're saying next man up. We're a big company. People want to work for us. If you don't, we'll hire somebody who does. That is what I'm hearing from you. The struggle with the larger corporations who are looking at the bottom line and the profit margins and managing to the street rather than what the greatness of the people that are working for them could be. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And because it's a larger organization, you have greater opportunity for people to hide within the pockets of the organization, so they're not fleshed out as well as you would for a mid-sized, small to a mid-sized company, where all of those individuals are more tightly known to each other. You can take a large organization that has 14,000 employees. They may have anywhere between 90 to 150 supervisors, and they operate in all 50 states. So bringing that particular group under that umbrella and concept, what we would work with is you do it one group at a time. And you make sure that you get those groups. You won't be instituting programs across the board. But larger organizations, they don't have the stomach for doing them in small pockets. They want to do everything in a big blast across the board. But I think of it the same way as you would experiment. Experimentation is Peter Senge's work in the 1990s talked about a learning organization. And if you want to be a learning organization, there are 5 things that you have to adopt. And one of them is experimentation. So you have to experiment with things that happen. So we suggest that you experiment with your culture as well as you would with running out a new product into a market. You want to make sure that you get people on board. What I find is if I'm doing that, I take the group that I believe will adopt the things that I'm trying to get them to adopt and that they will embrace it. And I work with them first and I give all kinds of attention to them. Then I bring a second group on that might be similar in likelihood to that. When you get the organization starting to be built around people who are doing the right things, who believe are the right things, you now get synergy, you now get action. But if you try to open it up across the board to everyone, you're going to get all of these naysayers who are going to produce this positive this negative income into the organization. They're going to be trying to tear it down. They're going to say, oh, this is just the flavor of the month. Just wait in another few weeks and we're not going to have to deal with that anymore. Because somehow they have been trained in their brains, or they've been trained in an organization that that's how they can survive. So it really takes a determination on the part of the leadership team. And just like with a marketing program, you don't give up on a marketing program after introducing it for a couple of weeks. And if it doesn't work, you actually have invested a lot of energy into it. You need to spend a little bit more time before you give up. The same thing works with culture. You need to create an investment for the individuals. You need to create that investment to the organization. And and so that's basically what I have seen in the difference in the larger organizations versus the smaller ones. Smaller organizations are more nimble and they're able to make changes more quickly than larger organizations. Sometimes larger organizations, there are individuals who are very ego driven within it. And so therefore they're making choices and decisions that benefit themselves and not necessarily those of others. I know I generalized that comment, and I might get some individuals who say, that's not my company, that's not me, how dare you say that? And again, I just say, I ask you to respect it as a generalization. If it's not your company, hallelujah. You should shout it to the rooftops that it's not your company. But I guarantee you there are still a large number of individuals who support a toxic work culture, and individuals who feel they have no choice are subject to that type of behavior on a day in and day out. And it's ridiculous.
I would say that those folks who support that toxic work environment probably part of the crowd that it's creating.
Absolutely. And they don't see a need to change because their comfort level doesn't
Yeah,
require them to
absolutely.
change. There's nothing to do, and they're still showing themselves profitable as an organization. But the people who are paying for the profitability are the consumers or the clients of the organization, and then the casualty is the internal employee. And what they don't recognize is, well, we're still making money, we're still showing great profits, our stock prices are rising. Well, that's true, but it's coming at a cost of the consumer spending. It's not coming
Sure.
because the employee base is doing the right thing. And that's what sometimes masks this whole problem. So we can't really begin to acknowledge it because it's veiled underneath these other indicators that don't tell the true story.
So it's
You've seen
almost
that
like
really
an
hurt.
like an emotional price pressure, right? I mean, we talk about the emotional IQ of the leaders of an organization. If they don't have a high EIQ, it's costing me more money. That's no fun.
No fun.
Sure. Sure. Um, I think we're about ready to open it for Q&A, unless we have any final points.
No, I told you I could talk for the hour, so we were good.
You
There
did a
you
great
go.
job of that. And what interesting topics. There's in what I heard overall. I know we're going to Q&A, but what I heard overall is, first of all, the tool set has to be accepted. Secondly, it's probably not that one tool that is going to get you to where you need to be, but it gives you the opportunity and the underlying approach to other tools being able to come into the fold, right? So you've got that foundation in building this culture that allows other people to accept new tools that are coming on board or becoming available, so that you can put them all in the toolbox and pull the right ones out for the right reason.
Exactly. You don't use a hammer if you want to screw in something. You use a screwdriver. So,
Right.
yep, exactly.
Well, cool. Let's open it up.
So everybody loved the conversation. They're thinking through it, and now our oh, I guess Jake, you took us out of broadcast mode.
Oh, okay. Right, right, right. We can go back there.
That's all right.
Pull Dr. Troy Hall up, and if you guys would like to ask a question, we'll do a hand raise. Okay.
So as I was saying, it looks like we have filled them with information and ponderance is upon us. Well, Dr. Troy, I would love to have you on again. There are so many more questions that I have, and this topic is near and dear to our hearts here at Mingle. I think one of the things that we look at as we talk about culture is the functionality of what Mingle can bring to that effort organization. I know that might be a plug and it's semi shameless. But on the other hand, we really feel like we want to enhance the ability for people to have the tools to initiate and engage actively in culture building, cohesion. So, as we look at some of the things that are coming up in your world, my understanding from previous conversations is you've got some exciting new stuff coming at the beginning of next year.
Yes, I do. And thanks for that little segue. So, yes, let me just say shameless plugging has always served us well. So, we spent a lot of time in the Cohesion Culture program offering our services to companies and helping them develop the individuals within the organization. But through the last 5 years, we've had so many individuals reach out to us and say, but what about me? I'm in a company. I'll develop myself. What can I do? So my strategic alliance colleague Benjamin Toy, and it's Benjamin, but it's Benjamin Toy and I are launching a book in January of 2025. It's called Becoming a Cohesive Leader, a power up guide to grow, develop, and advance your career. It is going to be built around the individual. We're targeting specifically individuals 40 and under who are looking to take that next step in their company one way or another, whether it's an advancement or how do I just get better at what I'm doing. Within that program, not only do we have the book, we have online education, we have physical in-person education that we offer. We have a membership program. Our membership program will give individuals access to so much of our leadership material that has really been proprietary for the company itself and for those individuals. Now they'll have access to it. We plan to offer part of the Mingle family a suite or office hours that individuals will be able to go into if they want to talk to our cohesion culture crew individually. And we also are developing career services. So for those individuals who need to have some help and support in doing interviews or resumes, things of that nature, they'll have an opportunity to engage into that portion of the program. And so we've got some exciting things that are happening with the book as far as some clever little things that will be a part of it. We are bringing the age of technology into this book. So it's real exciting. I can't share all the information with you right now because we're still fine tuning what that will look like. But there will be a guide to the Cohesive Leader book. And we're very excited about that.
That's awesome. And I'm excited for you. We are excited for you. And most importantly, we want to be able to help you in any way we can at Mingle. And we are in discussions of how that looks on the office hours and the suite. So that's exciting for us. And together, I think we can really kickstart some of these programs and allow people that, and you mentioned this in our discussion earlier, where you've got a lot of those pockets out there in 50 different states and that type of thing. What a better way to get them involved, on these daily or weekly or monthly type engagements than to do it here at me.
Yes.
That's
Well, awesome.
awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I guess the one last thing that I'll say to remind folks, and this is a little bit of my mantra, and is that you don't have to know everything. You just need to be teachable.
Absolutely. That's great. And with
Good
that,
line.
we'll finish up. Dr. Troy, it's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience want to ask a question before we head off?
Mom's the word.
No, just wanted to say thank you. That was very informative.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, cool.
All right.
All right,
guys.
Jacob and John, I'm out.
All right, Dr. Troy, thanks.
Okay,
We'll
see you there.
talk
Thank you for
soon.
being on.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to finish this up. I'm going to stop